They called it just another shift, but the man behind the register wasn't who they thought. When a black cashier breaks down mid-shift and her own managers mock her behind closed doors, an undercover CEO decides it's time to expose everything, and what happens next shakes an entire company. Now, let's begin the story. Aldrich Pennymore didn't need name tags to know who he was. At 59, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had scanned more balance sheets than sunsets, he'd built Pennymore Department Company from the ground up. 40 stores. 6 states. Thousands of employees. But on a damp Wednesday morning in Dayton, Ohio, none of that mattered. He stepped out of a rented Toyota Corolla, dressed in a plain navy vest with a sticker name tag that read, Doug P. No suit. No entourage. No greetings. He walked through the automatic doors of store number 27 on Needmore Road, and immediately, he knew. Something was wrong. There was no laughter. No life. Employees moved like they were trying not to be noticed. Tight smiles. Hushed steps. It didn't feel like a store. It felt like a place people survived. He checked in on the self-service tablet using a fake employee ID corporate had prepared. Doug P., trainee. His assignment, Shadow Assistant Manager Delrick Corman. The same Delrick whose name had come up twice in anonymous HR complaints flagged by regional directors, but never substantiated. Delrick met him near customer service. A tall man, loud cologne, and a smirk that said he loved being in charge. He barely looked at Aldrich before muttering, "Stick to Register 3. Shadow Janelle. She's full-time. Just watch and don't slow her down. Register 3. That's where he saw her. Janelle Broxley. Early 20s. Hair pulled into a tight bun. Uniform clean, posture perfect, but eyes red. Not allergies. Not tired. Red like someone who cried in a bathroom stall and hoped no one noticed. Her hands shook slightly when giving change. Her smile was brittle, her tone carefully even. Like someone who'd learned that stepping out of line, emotionally or otherwise, came with a price. Aldrich watched. Quietly. He helped bag groceries. Asked a few dumb trainee questions. And noted how she kept glancing over at the supervisors like a rabbit checking for wolves. When the line died down, he leaned in slightly. You okay? She stiffened, eyes darting toward Delrick. Just a long week, she said. He didn't press. But he'd seen this before. Back when he worked night shifts at a shipping warehouse, there'd been a woman named Tasha who smiled through everything, until her pregnancy became an excuse for the floor manager to push her out. No one did anything then. And something about Janelle felt all too familiar. He made up his mind. He wouldn't just observe. He'd listen, he'd watch, and when the moment came, he'd act. But what he overheard that afternoon would shatter more than just his assumptions. By mid-afternoon, Aldrich had blended in just enough to be invisible. He bagged, fetched bags of ice from the back, and offered quiet help to elderly customers. No one questioned him. That was the thing about retail, you could become background noise fast, especially if you didn't complain. At 2:15 p.m., Janelle's register froze during a cash transaction. She calmly apologized to the customer and waved down Delrick, who strolled over with mock exhaustion. What now? Delrick barked, loud enough to draw stares. Register froze again, Janelle said. It does this during cash sometimes. Delrick didn't even look at the screen. He reached over, unplugged the terminal, then plugged it back in. Try again, he muttered. Maybe if folks followed procedures. The customer looked confused. Janelle bit her lip and completed the sale with visibly trembling hands. 10 minutes later, she disappeared into the break room for her lunch. Aldrich gave it 5, then followed. The break room was fluorescent and soulless. Janelle sat in the corner, sandwich untouched. Her arms were crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. At a table across the room, two supervisors chatted like they owned the air around them. One was Arlen, a lanky, sharp-jawed guy who always seemed to be either whispering or smirking. The other was Darryl Pree, a stocky man with a neck tattoo peeking out from his shirt collar. Aldrich recognized both names from old HR records. Nothing conclusive, but too many patterns to ignore. He sat near the water cooler and opened a granola bar, pretending to scroll through the store's training app. The two supervisors didn't notice him. That was their first mistake. "You see Broxley again?" Arlen said, just loud enough. "Girl's been crying off and on since Thursday." "She's soft," Darryl scoffed. "All that, I'm offended, mess. Told her straight, HR's not gonna believe her. Got her on 2 strikes already." "Seriously? 1 more and she's gone." "Told Corman to keep her close. Make sure something comes up." Arlen snorted. "You're cold, man. She's trouble. Thinks the rules don't apply, 'cause she's got a kid. Like we owe her something." Aldrich's jaw clenched. He looked over at Janelle. She wasn't reacting, but she'd heard. Her fists were clenched in her lap, nails digging into skin. Still, she said nothing. Just sat there. Enduring. The 2 men left. Their laughter echoed. Aldrich stayed. After a long silence, he walked over. "You don't deserve that," he said, voice low. Janelle startled, then muttered, "I didn't hear anything." "Yes, you did. And you shouldn't have had to." She looked up, wary. "You don't know what it's like here. They treat people like we're lucky to even breathe near a register." "I've worked places like that," Aldrich replied. "I also know what happens when nobody says anything. It just keeps going. Not everyone gets to walk away," she said. "I'm not walking away," he promised. She looked at him long and hard. Her expression wasn't one of gratitude. It was disbelief. And exhaustion. "You really think you can change it?" she asked. "I think someone has to try." She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. And that told Aldrich all he needed to know. He would stay late. He would dig deeper. Because something was rotten in store number 27, and he hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. What happened that night would change everything. By the time 6:45 p.m. rolled around, the rush had thinned. The sun had dipped below the Dayton skyline, casting long shadows through the front windows of store number 27. Aldrich stayed late under the excuse that Delrick had told him to shadow floor inventory. No one questioned it. That was their second mistake. He waited. He knew the rhythm now. Supervisors didn't clock out right after dinner. They lingered. Held their little court in the break room. Talked like kings in a kingdom built on silence. And sure enough, just after 7:10, Delrick, Arlen, and Darryl filtered into the break room like they owned it. Aldrich had already slipped into a corner seat with his back to them, hood up, pretending to be dozing. But his ears were wide open. "She's gonna snap soon," Arlen muttered. "Saw her tearing up after some old guy yelled at her over coupons." "That's the plan," Darryl replied. "Make herself look like a victim. I've seen it before. That HR crap doesn't scare me." "Didn't she file something again?" Delrick asked, lowering his voice a little but not enough. "Last week?" "Yeah. Another email about hostile work environment. I forwarded it and hit archive," Darryl snorted. "Ain't nobody got time for that." Aldrich's fists clenched beneath the table. "Why not just fire her?" Arlen asked. "Because it's gotta look clean," Darryl said. "We write her up one more time, maybe she's late, maybe she argues with a customer. Bam. It's her fault." The men laughed. It wasn't loud. It was low and rotten. The kind that told you they'd done this before. This wasn't incompetence. It was a system. Aldrich's stomach turned. He'd spent years thinking culture flowed from the top, but no. Culture lived and died on the ground, between people like these. The three of them stood and left, casual as ever. Laughing all the way out. Aldrich waited a moment. Then slipped out the back. He found Janelle restocking returns near register 3, hands moving slowly, eyes hollow. She looked like a shadow of someone barely holding on. "You heading out soon?" he asked, clipboard in hand for cover. 10 more minutes. I've got closing register. You okay? She didn't even look up. Every day is long, she said softly. Then after a pause, "You heard them, didn't you?" Aldrich didn't respond right away. Then, "Yes. I did. I knew it," she whispered. "You don't just bag groceries and ask questions like that unless you're watching something." Aldrich gave her a long look. "I care more than most." She scoffed, but it wasn't cruel, just tired. "Why? You just started." He hesitated. Then she tilted her head. "You're not some guy named Doug, are you?" He exhaled, smiled slightly. "What gave it away?" "You ask too many questions. You listen too much. And no new hire sticks around for closing shifts unless they're looking for something." A crash echoed from aisle 7, someone had knocked over bleach bottles. 2 employees ran to clean it. The moment passed. But her words stayed with him. He was running out of time. And the night crew hadn't even clocked in yet. But what happened in the final hour before closing, when a man in a leather jacket stormed in, would push everything over the edge. 10 minutes before closing, the front doors slid open one last time. A man in a scuffed leather jacket staggered in, moving like he either hadn't slept, or had something stronger than beer in his system. His voice hit the air before the cold had time to follow. "Where the hell are your razors?" Heads turned. Then ducked. He was the kind of man people avoided instinctively. Aldrich, still near the returns cart, tracked him. Instead of heading to any of the open registers, the man marched directly to Janelle's lane. He dumped a random mess of items on her belt: motor oil, energy drinks, razors, a phone charger, and, bizarrely, a single athletic sock. Janelle straightened her posture. "Good evening, sir." "Price match all of this," the man snapped. "I can match competitor pricing if you show me the ad or digital link," Janelle responded, tone even. The man leaned in, breath sour. "You calling me a liar?" "No, sir. Just following policy." He slammed a bottle down hard enough that it bounced and struck the divider. "You being smart with me?" "No, sir." The tension was thick. Customers in the other lanes began to shift away. One woman gathered her child and quietly stepped into self-checkout. Still, no one intervened. Not Delrick. Not Arlen. They both stood near customer service, watching. Janelle's voice faltered for just a moment. "Sir, if you continue to raise your voice, I'll have to." "You gonna call a manager on me now?" the man shouted, arms wide. Then, without warning, he picked up the razors and hurled them across the counter. They clattered to the floor. That was enough. Aldrich stepped forward. "Sir, that's enough. You need to leave." The man spun around. "Who the hell are you?" "Just a store trainee." "But you're harassing an employee and you need to go." Delrick finally moved, slowly, deliberately. "What's going on here?" he said, tone lazy. Janelle pointed to the mess on the ground. "He threw items. He's yelling." Delrick turned to the man. "You okay, sir?" "She's got an attitude." Delrick shrugged. "Maybe next time just keep it polite, Miss Broxley." Janelle's jaw dropped. "I followed policy. He was shouting at me." Delrick looked bored. Then maybe you need to read customers better. Aldrich's blood boiled. Excuse me, he said loudly. Delric turned. Did I stutter? No, Aldrich replied. But you just showed me everything I needed to see. The drunk man stormed out with a string of curses. The store fell into a hush. Janelle didn't say anything. She simply pulled off her apron, turned around, and walked toward the back hallway, shoulders trembling. Aldrich stood there, surrounded by silence. Then looked Delric in the eye. There's a difference between running a store and leading people. You don't understand either. Delric sneered. What's your problem, man? You'll find out. Aldrich dropped his trainee badge into a nearby trash can and walked out. But he wasn't going home. Not yet. He waited by the employee entrance, just outside the loading dock. The air was cold. His jaw still tight. 5 minutes later, Janelle came out, hoodie over her uniform, backpack low. She didn't see him at first. But when he stepped forward, she froze. You again, she said, voice tired. You want to tell me it's gonna be okay? He looked her dead in the eyes. No. I want to tell you the truth. Then he said it. My name's not Doug. It's Aldrich Pennymore. I'm the CEO of this company. She blinked. Then laughed, a short, bitter sound. Right. And I'm Michelle Obama. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of him from Forbes. She stared. Then at him. You're serious? I am. Silence. I came here undercover, he said. Because someone sent a letter. Said they didn't want a raise. They just wanted to be treated like a human being. She swallowed hard. I wrote that. I figured. Janelle looked away, blinking fast. So now what? You fire a few people. Make a speech. No, Aldrich said. I came to ask what you need. And to tell you. I've been listening. The look she gave him wasn't hope. Not yet. But it wasn't doubt either. It was the look of someone waiting to see if this time would be different. It would be. The next morning, Aldrich Pennymore walked into the glass-walled boardroom of Pennymore Department Company headquarters in Columbus, Ohio. The mood in the room was clinical, corporate, polished. But the fire behind Aldrich's eyes said something else entirely. Around the table sat his senior team. Loretta Duquesne, head of operations, sharp suit, sharper tongue. Rafiq Bearden, HR director, calm, always calculating. And Stacy Norrell, legal counsel, already flipping through a thick binder of policies. Aldrich didn't waste a second. Who approved the last compliance review for Dayton store number 27? Loretta straightened. I did. Is there a discrepancy? There's more than a discrepancy, Aldrich said. There's rot. They all looked up. Rafiq frowned. What are you referring to? I'm referring to the fact that I spent 3 days working undercover at that store as a trainee. I saw the culture myself. I heard the supervisors mocking employees. I watched a woman get harassed by a customer while her manager stood by and blamed her. Stacy stopped writing. Loretta blinked twice. Rafiq sat up straighter. I was there, Aldrich said. And what I saw made me ashamed of my own name on the building. Silence fell like a gavel. Rafiq flipped open his folder. The records show only 4 complaints this quarter. 3 anonymous. 1 retracted. Wrong, Aldrich said. I personally saw at least 9. 4 never even made it to corporate. Someone filtered them. Stacy looked concerned. If that's true, we're talking about a system-level failure. No, Aldrich corrected. We're talking about a system working exactly as those in power intended it. He paced slowly. I heard them planning how to write up a cashier to get her fired. Not for cause. But for convenience. To look clean on paper. Loretta sat forward. If you have proof. I am the proof. I saw it. I heard it. And I'm not asking for opinions. I'm telling you what we're going to do. He laid a folder on the table. I want a quiet, immediate investigation of Store 27. I want Delric Corman suspended by noon. I want Arlen Maiden and Daryl Pree removed from the building by the end of the day. Bar them from contact with any employees during the review. Rafik looked stunned. You're serious? Dead serious, Aldrich said. And we're not stopping there. He turned to Stacy. Rebuild HR policy from the ground up. I want mandatory retraining for every district manager within 30 days. I want an in-person HR presence in every high-volume store by next quarter. No more digital forms and black holes. And what if regional leadership pushes back? Loretta asked. Then they can pack their offices. Because I'll walk into every store myself if I have to. One by one. The weight in the room shifted. This wasn't a CEO posturing for cameras. This was a man who had heard a woman cry alone in a break room, and realized the system he'd built was part of the problem. Anything else? Stacy asked, voice quieter. Aldrich stared out the window for a moment. Then turned back. Yes. I'm going back to Dayton. They all blinked. Why? Rafik asked. Because I owe someone a real conversation. Not a report. Not a policy update. A promise. And with that, he left the room. No applause. No dramatic music. Just the sound of his footsteps echoing through the marble halls of a company that was finally about to reckon with itself. When Aldrich walked back into store number 27 2 days later, it wasn't with a disguise or a name tag. No hoodie. No clipboard. Just a simple gray button-down, slacks, and the presence of someone who was there to face the truth, not hide from it. The woman at customer service froze when she recognized him. You're the CEO. He gave a polite nod. Is Janelle working today? The employee hesitated, then pointed toward the back. They pulled her off register. Stockroom. Of course they had. He followed the familiar hallway to the rear loading dock. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Boxes were stacked haphazardly. And there, bent over a pallet of small electronics, was Janelle, sorting labels with the precision of someone who knew her work would be double-checked for any excuse to punish her. She looked up. Eyes narrowed. You're back, she said flatly. He nodded. I said I would be. They didn't shake hands. She didn't smile. She just stared. I need to ask a favor, he said. Not as your boss. As someone who needs to listen. You already said that, she replied. People say a lot of things when they're trying to look good. He motioned toward the break room. 10 minutes. Nothing formal. Just, tell me what it's been like. For real. She hesitated, then put the scanner down. Fine. They sat in the same break room where he'd first heard her name used like a slur. Janelle leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. You want the whole thing. I want everything you're willing to give. So she did. She told him about the time Arlen made a joke about her hair, that it looked like she styled it with jumper cables. She told him how Daryl once blocked the hallway and called her fiery, because she didn't laugh at a dirty joke. How she was passed over for better shifts after she asked for a morning off to take her daughter, Lariah, to a pediatric appointment. She told him how the retaliation came wrapped in write-ups, for being 3 minutes late, for inconsistent facial expressions, for not upselling a customer on a warranty. I stopped checking the clock for time, she said. I started checking it to brace myself. When's the next hit coming? Aldrich didn't speak. He didn't take notes. He just listened. My daughter drew a picture, Janelle said, pulling out her phone. It's me at work. She gave me sad eyes. No mouth. She showed him the crude but gutting drawing on the screen. Stick figure Janelle, surrounded by tall gray buildings. Her arms were down. Her face blank. Aldrich felt something shift deep in his chest. She's 6, Janelle added. And she already sees it. When she finished, she looked up, daring him to speak. So now what? She asked. You fire a few people. Change a form on the website. Pat yourself on the back for being the good CEO. No, Aldrich said. I ask you what you need. For real. She blinked. Like she hadn't expected that. I want a reason to stay, she said finally. I want cameras in the break rooms, not to spy, just to remind people they're accountable. I want someone from HR on site weekly. Someone we can actually talk to. Not an email address. He nodded. And I want the next girl who files a complaint to be heard. Without needing a miracle. Or a CEO in disguise. Aldrich leaned forward. What if I gave you a role? One where you helped shape policy across the district. Not corporate. Not behind a desk. Something real. She laughed once, dry and disbelieving. You're serious? Dead serious. I want a direct line between people who live it and the ones who think they understand it. I didn't finish college, she said. I've never even led a team. Neither did I, he replied. But I listened. And that's more than most. She stared at him. Not with suspicion this time, but with something else. A flicker of belief. Let me think about it. That's all I ask. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. If I say yes, I'm not sugarcoating anything. He smiled. I'd be disappointed if you did. But the real test wouldn't be job titles or reforms. It would be whether the culture could truly change from within. The outside of Pennymore store number 27 didn't change. Same gray panels. Same parking lot lights buzzing under Ohio skies. But inside, the shift was unmistakable. Delrick Corman's office sat empty. His nameplate removed. No farewell email. No final warnings. The investigation had confirmed what Aldrich had already seen, fabricated write-ups, ignored HR reports, and a deliberate plan to silence anyone who pushed back. Darryl Pree and Arlen Maiden. Gone. Escorted out by HR and regional managers before noon. No speeches. No handshakes. Just the soft hiss of their final exits. Janelle Broxley didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just exhaled. Like someone who'd finally surfaced from a pool she'd been drowning in for months. Aldrich wasn't finished. He didn't go back to Columbus and move on. He called a team meeting with 5 department heads and rewrote the internal HR structure from the ground up. Not a memo. A mandate. Starting that quarter, every high-volume store across 5 states would receive a rotating on-site HR representative, real people, not just digital portals. Each rep would sit in on weekly staff huddles, not to monitor, but to listen. And cameras? Installed in break rooms within the month. Not to catch gossip, but to protect dignity. Janelle never asked for a promotion. She got one anyway. Her new title, District Experience Liaison, a role designed with her in mind. 2 days in store. 2 days remote. 1 day embedded with HR and training leads. Her input. Mandatory in new policy rollouts. Her voice. Heard in every regional call. One morning, Aldrich returned to store number 27 unannounced. He walked in through the front doors, no fanfare, no security, and saw her. Janelle was training 2 new hires at the returns counter. She smiled. Not the kind that looked pasted on, but real. Confident. Whole. She caught his eye and gave him a simple nod. Not one of gratitude, but of respect. A few aisles down, Aldrich found Harold, the janitor who'd told him the truth when no one else would. "You still mopping floors?" Aldrich asked. "You still pretending to be new?" Harold shot back, with a sly grin. They both chuckled quietly. Then Harold added, "You said you'd do something. Most people just talk." "I had to," Aldrich said. "That's the thing about power. It's only real when it helps somebody else." Later that week, Aldrich stood in his office, flipping through the latest internal metrics. Turnover was down. Morale had climbed. Complaints were still coming in, but now, they were being addressed. He closed the folder and walked over to the wall. There hung a photo, the first Pennymore store, 30 years ago. Just a small corner shop with vinyl flooring and handwritten signs. Back then, Aldrich knew every employee's name. Checked the bathrooms himself before opening. Somewhere along the way, ambition had pulled him too far from the floor. Janelle had reminded him what leadership really meant. That night, he left his phone and planner on his desk, stepped into the hallway, and headed toward the elevator. Because there were still stores, still people, whose stories hadn't been heard. And the job wasn't done until they were. This isn't just a story about a CEO in disguise. It's a wake-up call, about how easy it is for power to forget people, and how much it matters when someone finally chooses to listen. As Janelle said, "I don't want pity. I want people to stop being afraid." And Aldrich? He didn't save her. She saved the company. If this story moved you, subscribe to True Echo for more real, raw, and powerful human stories. Drop a comment, have you ever been unheard at work? And don't forget to share this story. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone.